So you might be wondering how we got here, and why I'm reviewing a phone way too late. Well,
So when I stay in Atlanta, I generally stay in a hotel like this. Pretty high stories and a nice view. Unfortunately, at the time, I was using my phone. This phone, the Nexus 6P. I loved it, from the camera to the speed to the fingerprint scanner. It was everything that I needed, and I thought it would be able to hold me over until the next rounds of phones came through. Unfortunately, it suffered a multi-story death, and basically I could never use this phone again. So I had to find a replacement really quickly. So I decided, let's buy the Pixel XL. They'll have everything I need, and I won't have any sort of frustrations, and it's the next phone coming up. Unfortunately, there are zero stock anywhere unless you're a Verizon person. So I had to wait for this phone. In the meantime, I was just without any sort of communication, and I was like, what do I do? Do I proceed, or do I just get a phone to hold me over? And I was like, I don't want to spend a bunch of money, so let me just try one of these for a while. So I picked up a flip phone, and it was like, I don't need smartphone things for a little bit. I can just text and call my friends. And then I realized very quickly that it wasn't just about the texting. I mean, I didn't have my email. I didn't have apps to call cabs or check into flights. So like things got a little bit more complicated. But the biggest complication was just text messaging. Like I didn't realize how terrible I was. This used to be a live recording of this audio. However, I had to devote so much brain power to typing this simple message that it's actually B-roll now. So you could imagine that as I was going through this in the week, I just ignored my friends. I was like, oh, you're texting me. I'm basically not going to communicate with you for a while because this is way too hard. I'm not going to waste my time doing that. So I was excommunicado from most people at the time. So you can imagine my frustration and why I decided to snap this phone in half because I don't need it anymore. Boom. So I was like, let's go for another option that's cheap. And I went on Amazon and got a bunch of reviews around the Blue Selfie 2, which is a nice phone. Again, $60. Probably the best holdover phone that you could ask for. I mean, it's a nice big screen, all the apps that you could possibly want. It's obviously limited in size, or in terms of space and storage, but it'll get the job done for you. But then I started realizing that the apps were really slow. It was hard to type because there was some lag. And the picture quality did not help me because I needed that for work, to take pictures of receipts and to take pictures of machines. But despite the shortcomings, I was pretty content on keeping it and just waiting until the next round, until the homie Richie from the comments suggested this phone, the Sony Xperia XZ. It was a nice little compact package and had pretty decent specs. And the more I played around with it, I learned to kind of just like and fall in love with some of the features. And again, this might be because I was so long on a subpar experience on two different devices, but just clicking through, I was like, this seems very stock Android. Like there's some skins obviously, but like it seems like a familiar experience. It seems snappy out of the box. Things weren't lagging, and it had every app and the storage that I needed for every day. So then the more I played around with it, I was starting to consider, like, do I just want to keep this phone and just like cancel my Pixel order and actually wait until the next iteration of phones? Like, will this be my daily driver instead of just a review that I do? That's what we'll figure out today. The XE has a very slim design that is quite attractive. Although it is plastically built, the screen does make up for it with how smooth it is, and the whole phone is quite easy to use and operate with one hand. On the bottom is a USB-C port as well as a microphone, and on the front there are two front-facing speakers, which are loud, however are harsh and tinny. You have your front-face shooter as well as your IR blaster to round off the face. Then we'll get into the buttons on the side, which is again more focused on the camera because there's a shutter button and a zoom button, which also doubles as a volume rocker. However, this button placement was a little bit annoying because it did make me feel like I was going to drop the phone. And then in the US version, we don't have the fingerprint reader, so we do have a spongy button that you'll learn to hate. On the other side, you'll notice that there's no need for a SIM card key because there's just a tab that you can pull back with your finger. And don't worry about it slipping out because you will see me fail multiple times to take this thing out. Like, trust me, like I'm still going to struggle. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to fail again. But I will finally show you the fact that there is a nice little feature here, which I think all phones should have, of expandable memory. So despite this phone being only 32 gigabytes, you can put your own memory in here, slide it back in, and be good to go. This is awesome for me because I have to save a lot of PDFs, take a lot of pictures, as well as cache music for offline use. So that helped me out with the constraint memory-wise. As we go to the top of the phone, you'll see that there's 3.5 jack, so you're not just locked into Bluetooth options or some adapter, so you can use your regular native headphones. And on the back, you see the camera as well as the dual flash, which is all powered by a 29 milliamp battery, which will heat up on you with resource-intensive apps, I promise you. So getting back into that battery, first day out of the box, super champ. 22 hours plus, no charge, no maintenance, no nothing. Getting into just casual use, again, there's a little bit of droppage, but nothing noticeable. Still got through the day with no issue. Then I started using more screen time and more apps. Again, you'll see more drops here, so more in the 16 hours, you might need a charge. But the weird thing was on the airplane mode and idle, it would just tank. I would go on a flight, airplane mode it, wake up from the flight, and it would just be dead. And all I was doing is playing music, and it was in idle. So I don't know what that is, but I think it's strange, especially for a phone like this. So here I'm going to show a little bit more of the UX of this phone. So I'm going to swipe it open, and you'll see that this feels very stock Android-ish. You have the pull-down bar and have all your normal toggles that you would have, but you'll notice that there are things around this that Sony has changed that make it not as optimal. So like the clock shortcut is gone, and you'll see some of those shortcuts that you're used to if you're stock Android that just aren't there for ease. So you will have to search for those apps instead. You do see that the long press is just much the same. You can get your wallpapers and widgets there. And then in terms of the actual apps themselves, you have the app drawer, but you'll see that there's a bunch of Sony apps. So for your albums, you have a nice little carouseling picture app, but also well as like a ton of other apps that you have to sort of accept agreements to or like register for, which is super annoying to me. In terms of other things, they have some fun apps like the AR effect. But again, I want you to caution you that this will probably heat up your phone, like I aforementioned. And so just be cognizant of what you're using because your phone will heat up in your hand. If we get back into the apps drawer, you'll see that there's a search bar on top, which is nice to sort of access those shortcuts that you would normally have in stock Android. But they do give you those recommendations for apps that you haven't installed, but you might, quote unquote, might want. For me, this seems like advertisement. But for people that like to try new apps or are not as familiar with apps, that might be cool for you or a feature that you'd use. And then now into the worst part. So we get into weather and it says I'm in Roosevelt Island. So this is Sony's weather widget and it thinks I'm in Roosevelt Island. This is obviously not the case because I'm going to go into Google Maps and kind of show you what that means. So Roosevelt Island is that landmass off the water there. Obviously I'm in that blue section, which is in Long Island City. But as I zoom in, even Google is getting it wrong from this phone. So it thinks I'm in a field or in a soccer field, which I'm not. I'm actually in a coffee shop nearby. So I'm going to use the voice feature and say the location. And it's going to basically show that in red. So you'll see that there's a Sweet Leaf Cafe. And that's where we are. That's where we're hanging out. I am not playing soccer, nor can I play soccer. And you might be thinking, oh, this is probably because you're on T-Mobile and it sucks, blah, blah, blah. I swapped out my SIM card for some friends, and we tried this on the phone. It kept misproducing. We even tried it on their phones with their services, and it didn't have the same issue. So it was literally just this phone based on what we could see. And then as you can see, like I'm just flying around. Like I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's the device I had, but it just literally could not produce the right location for me. So that was one of my biggest grievances. So outside of navigation, there are some other quirks, and I sort of want to get into those right about now. So on terms of the notifications bar, again, you have your icons, obviously, but these ones that are Sony are sticky. You cannot dismiss these unless the action is actually performed or something disconnected. So if you have an update coming up, it's going to keep telling you got an update coming up until it actually performs it. Or some of the more useful ones are like if you're connected to the LDAC, which has high quality audio, it'll stay there and allow you to toggle between those. So going over to the audio setup here, I've set up headphones on the microphone that I'm using for travel. So I'm going to bring down that LDAC sticky notification, and then you will see that there'll be two options. You have your best effort, which will make sure that you're always connected, and then your quality sound, option, which will ensure that you have it'll prioritize basically large data sets over its ability to connect. So you might get some skipping in that. However, you will get better sound, hypothetically. I think for this instance, I'm going to play some music and see if you notice any difference, but I was on Wi-Fi, so even on best effort, it's probably still pushing out all that information. So again, you probably didn't notice any difference because of the situation I was in. It was an ideal scenario. However, when I did try this when I was walking around, I did notice that the quality mode did cut out. There were skipping around. So I did find myself in best effort mode. Still sounded really good. I just wanted the reliability of a constant connection, and I didn't want it to hamper my listening experience. Getting back into the camera, one of my favorite features in terms of the software. The camera is extremely nice in manual mode. So there are some really weird quirks around the superior auto mode for the pictures that I'll get into later. But I did like the fact that it had so many options to just do basic edits on your picture. So you can change your white balance, make it warmer, colder. You can pick the accuracy of it. You can also get into your exposure levels. And it just basically give you that control that allow you to adapt to the scenario that you're in. So a lot of times audio is not perfect for what you're shooting, or it just analyzes the light wrong. So this gives you some of that flexibility, allows you to focus in on certain objects and just have complete control of the image that you're trying to produce. In terms of shutter speed, I didn't really have any issues with this, or at least shutter reactivity. So as you click a button, you will continually get a picture. So every time I clicked it, I would get the resulting picture. Again, in manual mode, this was awesome, and I thought that the pictures came out pretty well. The issue comes when you're going into auto mode. So you'll notice that if you're using manual mode and there was a lot of natural light, you'll get really nice reproduction, really sharp images with nice color reproduction. Again, the next picture, you'll see that you don't really have any issues with distortion. However, once you start using artificial light and you're using the auto modes, you'll see some sort of discoloration, some blurry edges, and just inaccuracies in things you'd expect, like faces. There's just a lot of distortion that you wouldn't want out of a fast shooter. And then at night, it's even worse because of the fact you don't have all the time to change those settings. So you just want to take pictures and have them recognizable, but this would just be like scary movie stuff where faces would blur. And I would try to force the focus with my finger, but it'd still come out with slow pictures that were blurry. Even when more light was introduced, color was not reproduced well, and then images were blurry and unusable because of all the noise in it. So there's only kind of standard with some apps that make shooting film a little bit more fun. So the AR one is the one that we played around a lot with. Basically just allows you to enhance your surroundings with some fake stuff. So you can make, I think there's like dinosaurs, there's sea life, there's elves, there's a bunch of different options that you can have kind of some fun with. But again, this is all pretty novelty and it'll wear away pretty quickly. But the thing that you do need to notice that some of these apps are really resource intensive, as I mentioned before, and they will heat up your phone. So much to the fact that the system will warn you and then actually shut down your camera because of the fact that it's causing too much heat. And you'll see the little notification come up here shortly. In terms of the front shooter, it was pretty decent. So, as Kick Genius would say, it gets the job done.
So guys, this phone is super weird. And I find it really hard to appreciate. There are good things about this, like the USB-C and the speed of charging, the expandable memory, the camera software and the way it connects to the Sony headphones. Those things really well executed. Beyond that, I don't know how you save this thing from the rest of its competitors. At these specs, it gets demolished by competitors out there that just execute much better, even if the specs are about the same or lower. There's just so much that's not polished about it, and that's what makes it so sad. Like the OS, the overall decisions with design on the outside just could have been done so much better to make the experience better. Like if it's a camera, if you're looking at this only as a camera, it's cool. Like shutter right here, zoom, but they forgot about the phone. Like do it the other way, Sony. Make an awesome phone experience and then put all the cool camera stuff, and then we might be more happy about it. And then, so yeah, like beyond that, I don't know what saves this thing. It's not the plasticky build. The camera's not so great that it'll save it. So it's just hard to recommend. And especially at $600 with this build quality, like this is not gonna make you want to buy this thing. Again, at a cheaper price, this might be a better steal. And there are places like I know in India that are running promotions that have $150 US off, which might make this more attractive. However, I might even say just hold off your money and invest it somewhere that's less frustrating than this experience. So there are a lot of things that I hope they do better in the Sony Xperia XZ Premium, like a better build quality. I know the camera's gonna be better and all these things. But while the specs look baller, I'd be really concerned about their execution. Because the specs on this didn't look bad, the execution is pretty bad. So, I mean, I just can only hope that they do better on the next iteration. So, this whole thing came up because I thought that maybe this would be able to hold me over and I might be able to return my Pixel and just like, you know, wait it out. But now I want my Pixel XL more than I ever have before. So I will not be keeping this phone. I will be shipping this once I get home. And yeah, that basically just ends our video because now we know what I'm gonna do with this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave your comments below. I really like hearing from you guys and getting ideas for other content. But anyway, I got a flight in the morning and Stella's making it really difficult for me to get home because of all the snow, and I'm hoping I do not get stuck in an airport again. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Later. Oops. Appreciate you.